Hey folks, welcome to the Josh Post podcast. No, not really. Actually, welcome to my YouTube channel, but this week I've got something a little different. As you can see, I've got set up in my living room a little makeshift podcast studio with my microphone and my laptop, and I have David, who is waiting in the wings. I got to know David about a year ago. He actually became a supporter on my Patreon page. Now, Patreon is a website where people can go and donate a couple of dollars, and it's a way for us to build kind of a community. A lot of sailboat channels have a Patreon. Many YouTube channels in general have this. But it's a way to kind of, I always say, to support the arts. It helps support some of the camera gear, some of the other expenses that go along with editing these videos. There's a misnomer out there that we're making a lot of money on YouTube. That is completely false. We make peanuts from YouTube unless you're a really big YouTuber, like millions of subscribers. But at my level, very minimal amount of money, so it helps with some of the money coming in from Patreon to help with some of the expenses. David has been a longtime supporter. And I'm talking to him this week because of a real tragedy in his life that happened recently. So about 6 months ago, he was on a mission to purchase a new sailboat. He ended up buying the sailboat a little ways away from where a long way away from where he lives, and he had to deliver the boat back to his hometown. During that delivery, he and his wife suffered a catastrophe. They ended up having to be rescued by the Coast Guard. Just completely, a complete tragedy. I'll let him get into the full story, but I'm just happy that he's here alive, able to talk to us today, because it was literally that serious. And I want to emphasize today that it's more about a learning experience. It's not a time to just, to bash David for maybe inexperience or all this. It's easy for us to sit back in our comfortable chairs and say things negative, but I want to keep negative comments out of this. Let's get to the interview with David. He's in Brownsville, Texas. I'm in Newport Beach, California. The beauty of Zoom, we're able to connect and see each other, so let's do it. All right, so we're here with David, and I really wanted to bring this together because it was a learning opportunity I felt for many of my viewers to learn about your experience, David, of what you went through purchasing a boat, what the boat purchasing process was like for you, what steps you took then. I know, and we'll get into this obviously in the story, but it was quite a distance from you where you lived. You had to go and essentially deliver your own boat back to your hometown. And then some major complications that occurred during that delivery. This is meant to be really, like I said, a learning experience. It's not meant for an open season to go and attack David, who I think is a great person and actually has become a good friend of mine. And just a little background is he and I have met through Patreon, and he's been a great supporter of my channel. And just the nicest guy you could imagine. And we've had a lot of talks about sailing and about not only sailing, but just the need for education, education of sailing. So we've really got to know each other well. And we've talked a lot through this whole process that you all will hear about, which you'll see is quite a wild ride. A lot of unfortunate events, but at the same time, something to learn from. So I want to just open it up to David to kind of introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me on your channel here. I have always been kind of an adventurous kind of person. Certified scuba diver, fly little single engine planes, did bull riding in my earlier days. I'm a veteran, Army veteran. And so I've been a paramedic for the past 36 years. I've been in higher education in one form or another for the past 29 years, currently serving as an administrative role in a college that I'm working at. I completed my doctorate education about 1.5 years ago. So, just again, proving that education never stops. You just keep on going. So that's kind of my background right there, where I come from. I don't like being told you can't do something because you're too old. I will continue to try and live the adventure. And I always believe that people spend so much time worrying about dying that they forget about living. And I plan on living all the way until the day I die. So there's my background there. Go ahead.
Tell me how you got into sailing.
Well, I was first introduced to sailing right before my 30th birthday. There was a guy who had a little 2-man sailboat type thing, and he said, "Let me show you how to do this." We went off into the lake and did it. Fell in love with sailing, learned all about the angles and sailing too, and how to adjust, and how to put the dagger board in, and how to get the boat back up right when you tip it over, and loved it so much I went out and bought me a sunfish, and borrowed a bunch of dolphins, and went out and did a lot of sailing with that. And really, really enjoyed that. Took the kids out with us all the time, and just really enjoyed that small sailing and the thinking through the adventure of getting out there. And that was pretty much it for getting into the sailing before I turned 30.
Okay. And then obviously more recently getting kind of back into it, I guess, or was it continuously throughout the time, or you kind of got sparked into it more recently?
Just occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just occasionally, and I'll tell you, I had a girlfriend when I was in high school, and we've maintained contact for quite a few years. And her and her husband retired, and they bought an RV, and they decided that they're just going to travel around the United States. So they traveled around. I think they made one trip around the United States, and they parked their RV up in the Northwest, and they're just happy living in a little campground there. And I thought, why do you have to be restricted to land to do that? Why not do sailing? Why not have an RV on water and just be able to get out and see things? I've always been in love with the Caribbean. I love the Mexican Caribbean coast. I've been to Cayman and Jamaica on the cruise ship, and I definitely love being out in the water. And so I thought, well, why not? And then when it comes time that I'm too old and I can't sail it anymore, I've got a nice liveaboard that I can retire on as a liveaboard.
Sure.
So what I did then was I decided to do my ASA sailing classes.
Okay.
Because obviously I've never driven anything that big before, sailed anything that big. So I did my ASA 101. And then went back and did my 103, 104. And I knew that I still needed some navigation skills. So I did the 105 also. And then when I got done with that, I got very serious about looking for a sailboat.
Okay. So this past spring, it wasn't like you were just jumping in, as far as you had quite a few courses under your belt by that time.
Correct. Yeah, this is correct. I had all those courses finished before I even started looking for my first sailboat. I mean, right. I guess I was looking, but just not looking seriously until I got the courses done, which let me know a little bit more about what size I could handle, what I needed. And what I was looking for, the original thought was something that was over 35 foot because it could handle the Caribbean sailing. I was looking for something that definitely had liveaboard conditions. Something that had autopilot, something that had a reliable motor with the sail, so I could choose either one of those. My wife, she obviously had to have a full galley, and she wanted to have an ensuite head with a separated shower. Okay, so I also needed something that I could run pretty much single-handedly with a little bit of help from my wife, maybe, because it was just going to be the two of us that were doing most of the majority of the sailing. So I knew that limited how big I could go, but I also needed to know how small I could go also.
Right. So I'd say that, that probably mindset is 90% of, sailing couples out there, kind of trying to juggling, the needs of one spouse versus the other, and then the wants and needs of the other, and then finding something you can meet in the middle. And so this past, I guess it was kind of the first year or so, or when did you really start looking seriously for the boat we're going to talk about today?
Well, I started looking for the boat probably last October-ish.
Okay.
And I found a really nice Hunter 37 in Corpus Christi, which is fairly close to where I live, a couple of hour drive. So I drove there, and like you have always taught me, get a survey. So I got the surveyor there, and he said, the whole top deck is completely rotted out. It's mush. This thing's going to collapse within a couple of years. And I said, okay, well, thanks. I'm not buying this boat. So I looked at another boat in Kima, and which is probably maybe a 6-hour drive from me. So I went over to Kima, and I got there and they said, yeah, it's just the mast is cracked a little bit. But if you pull out the mast and you repair it and you put this boot in there, no, that's okay. I'd rather not do that. I looked at another boat in Kima, and it said, well, if you just fix this hatch that's leaking, and I looked, and the dining room table there was completely waterlogged, soaked, separated plywood. The floor underneath it was separated. And I said, no, that's not really what I'm looking for. So I looked around quite a bit for the boat, and I finally found one in Florida. And I didn't want to go to the east coast of Florida because I knew that was going to be a long time getting around the Keys and getting around Florida.
Right.
So I knew that about halfway up Florida on the west coast would work out about okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew out there to look at the boat, and then I flew out there again to do the survey on the boat. And then
this was near it was near Tampa Bay area or something approximately.
Yeah, it was close to Fort Myers.
Gotcha.
And then flew out there again to bring the boat back home.
Okay.
When we finally made the deal on it.
Mm-hmm.
The boat had spent about the first 10 years of its life in Chicago in fresh water. So I knew they had a better lifespan on it also than being in seawater for the whole time.
Sure.
One of the problems with the boat is that this is a Hunter 376.
Okay.
It's got a 6'6" keel on it, and nobody wanted to buy it in Florida because that was too deep of a keel for sailing around the Keys.
Right.
So he was just going to sell and get rid of it because nobody could really use it close to in that part of Florida. It just too often hit the bottom. It was just too deep of a keel.
And so then your plan of action was to go get the boat and deliver it back. I wanted to talk, kind of the majority of our talk will be about that.
Sure. So what we did is we went there to go get the boat. I have 2 cats, and I had somebody babysit my cats for me. And I look, I've been through the charting classes, so I've looked through the maps and I looked at everything, and it looked like a straight across sail from there in Florida, approximately Fort Myers, Florida, to all the way south of Texas, approximately Brownsville, Texas, and straight across the Gulf. It'd probably be maybe 10 days or so. Mm-hmm. So I asked for some time off from work to be able to go get the boat and bring it back home. Mm-hmm. And again, that's partially naivety on my part. I admit it right now that I thought it would just be an easy sail across the Gulf. I checked shipping channels. I checked for oil rigs, et cetera, to make sure that the path was going to be clear to be able to do that. And everything looked good.
Right. And now so this is, if I could just pause for a second on that, is that that's a big highlight I wanted to point out to viewers is that you're finding if you're going to purchase a boat, how far of a distance you want to look, how far is your range of looking. If you live in a certain part of the country and you want to, because my thought, I remember when you were first telling me, and I was actually contemplating whether I could somehow make it there with my schedule to help you a little bit, but I wasn't able to. But I don't know if it was over 1,000 miles or so, or do you remember approximately?
Yeah. Well, again, thinking about what 1,000 miles and reading, I thought I could get by with maybe 100 miles a day, which proved to be really unrealistic.
Right. And I think that would be something everyone or most people would think of until you try it. And I can only speak from my own experience going from Annapolis down to the Bahamas, having a similar mindset of, it's only this much distance. I can get there in, XYZ number of days. I'd heard of people taking off from like Norfolk, Virginia, getting down in 5 or 6 days. And then you're in the Bahamas, sitting on Easy Street. But that was, again, my naive kind of beginner sailor kind of mind that it wasn't that, it was more like a month to get somewhere, that I thought would take less than 10 days. And I think you can probably relate to almost the exact same situation. It's like, oh, no big deal, 10 days, but it's probably something you could have definitely spent, a month or 3 weeks on probably.
Well, right. Definitely. Thinking 100 miles a day and then realize your boat is sailing at about 6 or 7 knots. Right. And then realize that I'm glad I get 50. With luck, I can get 75. Yeah. And that's if I limit my sleep time a little bit. Right. So yeah, it was definitely a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. We took off on the first morning and had a beautiful sail. Probably one of the best sails I've ever had in my whole life. And sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning, the waves hit us. I mean, waves hit us really hard. The boat was rocking over pretty bad. The wind really picked up and it ripped the sail out of the track.
Wow.
And so we motored the rest of the way. We got back in about 5 o'clock in the morning. And we just found a dock. I couldn't find anybody. I didn't know where any docks were. We found a dock and tied up and spent about 2 nights there, putting the sail back on the track. And the sail wasn't damaged, just the rivets of the little plastic connections had come out from the track. And so we just unscrewed, put it back inside, and everything worked fine after that. Okay. So we took off from there and decided that we would go straight north up to Pensacola. And so we started heading north. And things were looking good. We were sailing along okay. Dolphins following us the whole way. So everything was going okay for us. We get to Pensacola and realize there's no place to park a boat. Nowhere. There's nowhere. And we're asking around, like, why is there nothing here? They said, well, the hurricanes came in and they destroyed a whole bunch of the harbors where people had their boats parked. So any place that did have some spots available, some slips available, they moved all their boats there. So there's nothing available for the transit sailor to park a boat, to sleep for the night. And all you can do is throw down an anchor somewhere and sleep out on the water. There are no docks available anywhere.
Okay.
We continued with the wind and the waves. Now we're sailing in April now. So it's April. So we're sailing in April and we're still getting a lot of high waves. The winds were okay. It was just the high waves that were really rocking the boat and making things uncomfortable. We made it to Mobile, Alabama, and now we're 14 days into our 10-day trip. Okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm realizing that I got to get back to work. You know, I have a job to protect here.
Right.
So I end up finding a place where I can finally park my boat and get back home. So I parked the boat there in Mobile, Alabama, and fly back home. For the next about month or 6 weeks, I'm looking for anybody who can move the boat from Mobile, Alabama to Galveston, Texas. Everyone tells me that the most dangerous part of the Gulf is going around New Orleans because of the Mississippi River, because of the oil tankers, because of the unlit oil rigs, because of everything out there. And so it was very, very difficult to try to find someone who would move the boat. I finally did find someone who would do it. And I paid him, and he moved the boat over to Galveston. And so I knew now I've got a quick intercoastal trip from Galveston down to South Texas. Everything's going to be really easy from now on. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I head up
and
to
now
Galveston.
just to backstep a couple, the first trip before you had the delivery, some of the short delivery there, you had brought, you said your wife and then some other family members.
Yeah,
so,
she had her sister and her niece. Yeah.
And what was their opinion after they had a few nights of just the real crazy weather and everything?
They were not really happy with the noise that the boat was making, and because the waves are so high, if you go sideways to the water, it rocks your boat over to about a 30-degree angle there. And if you face into it, it lifts your boat up and slams it down into the water. And actually, my sister-in-law came up where we were up on top and said, I think this boat's going to break. I think it's just going to break. I said, no, it's in good enough condition. It'll be okay. It's not going to break. But here, you might want to sleep with your life vest on just in case. So, they were not real happy with the trip. They were glad to get back home.
So then you left it, and then the Galveston situation, that's where we are now, that you were getting into that story of trying to figure out a time to bring it back down to South Texas from Galveston.
Right. So we drove up to Galveston planning that it's going to be good enough weather for us to get down, and sailing intercoastal is going to be fine. And we get there and a storm comes in, floods everything. We never even leave the dock. Wait for the next morning. They got some flooding going on. The docks are underwater. And I said, okay, this might not be a good weekend to try to do this. So we drive back home. Okay, let's try next weekend. Oh, you know what? Next weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and that'll be perfect because the fact that I can leave early on Friday, that gives me 4 days to make a 3-day trip, probably from Galveston to South Texas. should work out fine. Call everyone I know. No one can watch my cats. So it's me and my wife and my 2 cats. And we go up to Galveston to get the boat. We get everything prepped. We fill up. We dump our tank. We fill up with water. We fill up with diesel. I've got 6 5-gallon containers of diesel on the deck. So we're ready for, if we have to motor all the way, we're ready to go. So we take off and we start going down get across Galveston Bay, and everything's going pretty well. Drop the anchor down, spend the night, and have a pretty good night's sleep on there. So we said, okay, the next day we're going to try to stay within the intercoastal channel. So we start heading down the intercoastal channel, and we're I'm trying to think exactly where we are, but we're going into the intercoastal channel. We sail for about 2 hours down the intercoastal channel, and I get my first drawbridge, my first one. I've never had to call in for a bridge before. I've got a 61-foot mast on this boat, but this is not even an overhead bridge. This is one where you have to call the operator and they have to open up the bridge. And so I called the guy and he says, yeah, we're ready to open at 5 p.m. Now, right now it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And I said, we can either drop anchor and spend 7 hours here doing nothing, or we can head back around to the Gulf and come in at the next.
Go around. Yeah, essentially go around in a little find another inlet.
Find another inlet to come in. So we head back out to the Gulf, which is another 2 hours out there, get back to where the Gulf entrance was. And then so we head back out and we start heading down. And the next entrance that's coming in, that's actually a passable entrance. And I use this, the Intercoastal Waterway Guide online. Okay. And and I can give you the link to what that is, but they have a lot of pictures, a lot of information about this entrance is closed. They're doing shoaling here. This is not good. This one is passable, etc. So it has a lot of coastal information. And the next open place I can find is Port O'Connor.
Okay.
So we take off and we start heading down again. And I look at my chart plotter and it says, looks like we'll be there like in about 5 hours. And then I'm looking at it says, no, it's more like 7 hours. No, it looks like it's more like, and because the way the current and the wind and the waves were going, we were not going to get there in time. It's now probably close to about 8 o'clock at night. It's getting dark. And my choice is I can either drop down in this really, really choppy water or try to make it to this next inlet, which is probably still another hour away before I turn in. So we decided we're going to go ahead and just keep on trucking down the road, get to the next entrance and make it into Port O'Connor. And then the storm hit. And the storm hit and pushed our boat into the rocks at Port O'Connor. We're hitting the bottom. I'm trying backwards. I'm trying forwards. I'm trying anything to get off these rocks. I can't get off the rocks. So I call on channel 16 looking for anybody.
Let me back up a second. So as you're coming in, a lot of these inlets will have these big buoys that'll say come in this way. So you all are coming in, but the storm by that time was really intense. I think you said in an email. Correct.
Yeah, it got intense before we ever made it to the inlet.
Okay.
I mean, I could see the red lights ahead of us.
Right.
Right. So I knew I was that close where they were still within my vision there.
And then did the wind just completely take you off kind of course, and you just couldn't manage
completely off course, completely off course into the rocks around
right at the end
Port O'Connor.
Okay.
And so we're calling on channel 16. Nobody's answering at all. Calling, anybody help me pull me off the rocks here so I can get around. No one's responding at all. No choice at all but to call the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm. So now, what time was this again? Middle of the night, or
probably now close to 10 p.m. maybe or so.
Okay. So everything's dark completely at this time.
Everything's completely dark. Yeah, everything's completely dark. Which is my first piece of advice: don't sail at night unless you're in the middle of the ocean somewhere. I mean, it's just not fun at all.
Right.
You don't know when the waves are going to hit you. You don't know when the wind is going to pick up. You just it's too much. Yeah. You can't rest at all if you're at night. So they push us onto the rocks and we call for the Coast Guard. And there's a Coast Guard boat they call the small boat that's over there. And they send the boat over our direction. They say, we can't get to you. The storm is too big. The rocks are too close to us. The waves are hitting us too hard. We can't get to you. The only thing we can do is call for the helicopter to come in from Corpus Christi, which is the closest one. I said, okay. Well, by now the boat is starting to tilt quite a bit, and it's going over on its side. I don't worry about sinking because I know I'm on the rocks. So I know I'm going to be okay with this. And then they call back and they say, there's a storm coming in right now. Another storm front is coming in. There's a big front coming in. They're not going to be able to leave Corpus Christi for at least another hour and a half. So my wife is pretty well freaked out by now. I'm just realizing that, again, from my paramedic background, you're doing everything you can, but there's not much more you can do. The helicopter can't fly. The boats can't get to you. All you can do is hang on. So we go downstairs to start getting our stuff. I had enough common sense to grab my wallet and grab my truck keys. So I got those. We're looking for the cats. I found one cat, put him inside his carrier. Can't find the other cat anywhere. The boat is getting filled up with water now, and the boat starts laying on its side. So we're actually standing on top of the helm sideways with the side rails above our heads there to try to keep ourselves above water. We have water about chest high that we're dealing with now. Every time a wave comes in, something else comes out of the boat. Wave comes in, something else comes out of the boat. So all my cushions, all the life jackets, my wife goes back down to try to look for our other cat. We still can't find the other cat. The coffee pot had fallen off the shelf, broken on the bottom. She steps on the glass there, gets real nasty cuts on her feet. So she's bleeding pretty good from her foot. I go down also, and I realize there's limited spaces for the cat to be now. And I can't find the cat anywhere. So we realized that we lost the cat. And it's a rescue cat, so you feel even worse about that, because it was a rescue cat.
Certainly.
But then we come back up, and now all the lights gone out because now the water's completely in the boat. We have no electricity. We have no radio signal because even my portable radio is down there somewhere. My flashlight is down there somewhere. So we're just sitting in the dark with the waves splashing over the top of the boat. The rain is coming down very, very hard, and not sure what's going to happen. We ended up spending 6 hours in the water before the Coast Guard finally got there. It was really nice to see those spotlights coming in. Coast Guard rescuer came down, put my wife into the basket, took her up, came down again. I said, take my cat. Okay, I already lost one cat. I don't want to lose a second cat. So take my cat. So I took my cat up next, and then I was stirred up inside there. And they said, wow, you guys are really lucky. The winds were blowing 89 miles per hour when your boat crashed. And I said, yeah, I can believe that. Okay.
Wow.
So basically we lost everything that was on the boat, which is all replaceable. You're thinking about, I survived, I made it through the night, lost one cat, but we're alive. We're alive. So that's a big thing. So they take us over to Port Lavaca, which is the closest airport to Port O'Connor. And the local sheriff's office picks us up there. They give us some water to drink because obviously you've got so much salt water in your mouth, in your nose, in your system that you're just totally dehydrated from the whole experience. Gave us some water, gave us some blankets to warm ourselves up with. And the local sheriff said, we'll take you to the local hotel. Again, knowing I had enough common sense to grab my wallet. So we check in the hotel. It's 3:00 in the morning now. And I walk in with my shorts on. Now, I need to emphasize I had my shorts. That's it. No shirt, no hat, no shoes, no flip-flops, no socks, nothing. I've got my shorts on. And I'm a professional kind of guy in my work. And I'm apologizing to this lady, like, I'm sorry that this is the way I'm checking in the hotel, but this is all I got, you know? So she put us in the hotel for the night. We paid for the night and slept okay for a few hours. We got up in the morning and called for the local taxi, took my wife to the emergency room for her foot. They looked at her foot and said, yeah, it's cut up pretty bad. Could probably use some stitches, but we're not going to do anything. You just spent 6 hours in salt water and there's no telling what kind of infection is inside there. So we'll bandage it up, give you some crutches, give you some antibiotics, and go see your doctor when you get back home. Okay. So now I've got to figure out how I'm going to get home, because I've got my truck, which is about 2 hours north of me, and I've got my house, which is about 3 hours south of me. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I know I can call Uber. Well, except that's on my phone, and my phone's in the bottom of the ocean. Well, what about using the Uber app? Nope, sorry. What about going on your computer? No, my computer's in the bottom of the ocean also. So I've got nothing there, no way to call anybody. Most of the people that I know are programmed into my phone. I don't have their numbers memorized. So I'm not quite sure what to do. I said, oh, okay, I'll get a rental car. I called, they said there's no rental cars available. What's the next closest city? Is Victoria. So I called Victoria. They said, sure, you realize this is Memorial Day weekend, right? There are no cars anywhere available. We'll have one on Tuesday. And I said, no, because now we're on Saturday. And I said, no, this is not going to work for me at all. And so when we're at the hospital, the receptionist there says, I have a friend who drives Uber, and I think that she will do that for you. And I said, bring her on. Let me know what she can do. So she did. She agreed to take us to Galveston. We went to Galveston, got in my truck, drove the 6 hours to get home. And yeah, my wife has been out of work for probably about 6 weeks while her foot was healing, and walking on crutches or the little wheelie thing. And my cat never left our side. I mean, it just felt really, really good. The cat was just there with me. I remember that when I told the Coast Guard that my cat was gone, they said a lot of people jump in the water after their pets and they end up dying. Wow. The pets end up swimming to shore and they make it out okay. I always hoped that I would find my cat, but no luck so far. We did have my cat in his carrier, and I had it sitting on top of one of the winches, holding it on, because he's a fat cat. It just weighs too much to hold it all that time. My wife said, be very careful, because that's going to fall off of the strap's going to break or something. The very next wave came in and knocked him off, knocked the whole carrier off underwater. And I went down into the water and grabbed his carrier and brought him back up. And I thought, but that's really, he can't even swim if he's in a cage underwater. I mean, right. So I was really glad we were able to save him, and he enjoyed the helicopter ride. He ended up being okay. I remember talking to my son. I have a son who lives in Oregon. I was talking to my son about this, and he said, Dad, when have you taken time to decompress? And I said, it's horrible when your kids are more intelligent than you are, right? and he said, ever since you came back, you lost your passport, you've applied for a new passport, you got your new travel card, you got mom taken care of at the hospital, you got put in the insurance on your boat, you did, all these things here. When have you had a chance to decompress? When have you had a chance? And I realized, again, from being a paramedic and also being a veteran, there's a little bit of PTSD going on here, a little bit of stress that's going on. And it did take me, a while to decompress from all this. I think you had contacted me earlier and asked about how things were going. And I said, I'm not ready to talk about it just yet.
Right.
It took time to deal with it, to decompress it. One of the things I learned from you, Josh, that you were telling me, and you sent me in one of the messages, was planning on your time is the sailor's worst enemy.
Right.
And I think that was a very important lesson to think about when I thought it was going to be a nice 10-day trip. And like I said, 2 weeks later, it's only halfway across, and still it's another month to even get it the rest of the way that we made it. But I haven't given up on sailing. I went sailing on Saturday. I have an offer on a boat right now that I'll be doing the survey on tomorrow. Okay. So definitely intercoastal. Yeah, definitely intercoastal. The Gulf does not seem to be a very friendly place to be out there without years of experience under your belt. And even I tried to stay close to shore. and I still got hit pretty good with the waves.
Mm-hmm.
The wind was not so much of a problem as the waves were. Mm-hmm. And obviously nighttime sailing is not for the faint of heart at all. No idea what's coming ahead of you.
I was gonna kind of stepping back. I mean, you're giving some good pointers now, but what are kind of the biggest, I guess, lessons learned from this whole experience? Obviously, I'm hoping your new boat you're looking at is closer to home.
Yes, it is.
Is one thing. Yeah. I think
it's in Corpus, and it will be definitely intercoastal all the way.
Okay.
No doubt about that.
But what else can you tell us as kind of a teaching moment from this experience?
The teaching moment is that you really need to study your apps. Now, I used Windy and I used Predict Wind, but none of those could really tell me how the waves were doing. Mm-hmm. And I think I haven't found a wave app that goes along with the wind to tell you that you be careful about this. I think one thing is never plan that you're going to be someplace. Always have plenty of time ahead of you, as we've mentioned a couple of times here. Don't sail at night. These are the big takeaways that I have from this. Is that nighttime sailing is scary, it's dangerous, and you have no idea what's coming next. Mm-hmm. When the waves would hit the side of our boat, we had no idea we were rocking. When you're manning the steering wheel on your boat, manning the helm on the boat, and you end up sliding all the way off the helm to the other side, and you realize that I'm tired from just holding on to this boat. It's if you can get your wind and your waves in your best sailing days under control, I think that's highly recommended there.
And I'm sure this might come up with some of the viewers about, the weather stuff. I mean, was anything showing you on these windy or the predict wind, the heavy winds and stuff that were going to be happening in the next, 24 hours that you were going to be out there?
Most everything that I saw on the weather apps showed that the winds would be up to about 25 knots. And I knew that they would be okay. Nothing really showed high waves. But then again, 3 to 5 foot wave is pretty significant,
right?
Hitting the side of a sailboat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I just really appreciate you sharing the story. And when I heard this, I got that lengthy email from you about the full experience, which it read like it was a very suspense novel kind of book, right? Because of the story you went through and the craziness. So I appreciate you sharing your story.
Sure.
And like I said from the beginning, the goal was never the goal is not to point fingers at you and say, oh, look at this guy, he didn't know what he was doing, he got in a whole mess, and then the Coast Guard had to rescue him. The point is to try to teach others of some of the experiences, and the fact is it could have happened to anybody. I remember personally an experience similar to yours where not at all similar in the fact that you had to be rescued and crashed against the rocks, but I mean the feeling of, okay, do I wait down the ICW? I was in St. Augustine, Florida, and it was one of these things where, okay, the bridges are going to take so much time. I don't want to have to wait all day for these different ones to open, different bridges to open. I'm going to go ahead and go out the inlet and then try to go, whether it was 50 miles down the coast and then come back in. And that's what people don't realize can be a real nightmare. As soon as you cross that sort of inlet channel marker,
right.
If it's bad conditions out there, it's not pretty. And I remember that particular day, as soon as I got out there, actually the current was almost pushing me into the channel marker, these huge buoys out there, somehow just barely avoided it. And then as soon as I got out a little further, I'm just hitting these huge waves, the boat's just, catapulting in the air and then back down. And then the entire day was a complete nightmare of trying to wrestle with waves and somehow make it to the next inlet. But I mean, I was, whatever, a few feet or whatever you had measured in from being in the same exact situation that you were, but somehow, luckily was able to avoid something like that, but it could happen to any of us. And so there's definitely lessons learned to be.
It's really easy to sit back and play Monday morning sailor, right?
Yeah.
Like Monday morning quarterback. I can go back and think about things that I should have done, should have thought about, should have, but but then again, you learn from these, right? You learn from these. The number one answer would have been, wait the 7 hours for the channel to open. That would have been the easiest thing to do. Drop anchor in the middle of the waves and ride out the storm on anchor versus being pushed out. Would the anchor have held in that kind of winds? I don't know whether it would have or not. But there are lessons to be learned, and I think it's really easy to go back on the Monday morning the Monday morning sailor and say, well, if I was in that, here's what I would have done.
Certainly.
And you realize that when you're sailing in the intercoastal, that you have a nice calm river running there that's just going perfect. And when you, like you mentioned, as soon as you make that turn and get into the Gulf, you're saying, well, this is not what I signed up for here. This is not working like I planned for it to be, which is why so many people do sailing in lakes and then inland bay areas and things like that don't get into the open ocean like that or the Gulf.
Well, the other thing you mentioned earlier that I didn't really take into account when I was first starting on kind of longer voyages was a lot of sailors out there are in fact taking a lot of time because they're waiting out any weather. So anything that would be slightly questionable, they're like, no way, I'm not going to leave either, the anchor or the safe marina or whatever they're at. And they'll wait 3 or 4 or 5 days until it becomes really easy to go out and navigate. So I think that's the biggest thing is that when you think you're going to go on the certain schedule, okay, and tomorrow I have to leave by 6 a.m. Yeah, it's tough because like you said, you had a full-time job and you only had a certain amount of time to get the boat back, and so it's a toss-up. I mean, a lot of people could have been in that same situation.
Well, this was also the issue with Pensacola. They had no open slips available, so there was no place to even park my boat, and then that come to part of your decision making, like, okay, if I can't park my boat here and I got to get back to work, what are my choices here? I can't abandon the boat in the middle of the ocean here. So move on and keep going until you find the next open port.
Right.
And like I said, the first place I found that I could actually park my boat ended up being in Mobile, Alabama. And that was the first place I found. I couldn't find anything in Florida at all, just completely filled up. And even when I was in Alabama, I was by Orange Beach, I think is what it's called over there.
Okay.
And nothing there either. So you just keep on moving on down until you finally find a place where you can actually park your boat.
Crazy. Wow. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know it's a work day, so we just kind of took our lunch break to do a little Zoom call.
I did. Yes.
So I really appreciate your time. And I'm going to show some images and things as we, editing this and talking to try to show some of the stuff you went through. And then there was that really crazy footage from the Coast Guard that I will show as part of that rescue. That was pretty wild. Well, thanks so much for your time, and thank you for your support for so many months on Patreon. Really helpful. And I look forward to hearing about the new boat. Hopefully I'll update the viewers here in a couple of weeks of whether you ended up buying it. Maybe we can put up a photo of it or whatever.
A photo, right.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Josh. Okay.
All right. Thank you all for watching this week. Very intense situation there with David, and I'm just glad he survived. Just goes to show that while we all do boating for fun and it's really a great recreational activity, it can be really dangerous. I was looking up, researching some of this, and I found out that an accident occurred literally 1 month after David's incident, and it was in the same location, Port O'Connor, and somebody had come in at night, middle of the night again, through the jetty. This time he was actually at the jetty, and he hit the jetty and actually died in the accident. So very dangerous in the wrong conditions. Another thing I picked up off of this as a learning tool I wanted to share with you is that when you come into these ocean inlets, you're going to see usually a string of navigation buoys. And those buoys are set up, they call it a fairway, and it's kind of like a runway for an airplane. The idea is that you go straight into the fairway and then into the inlet. You would actually aim for the outermost buoy, which is typically quite a distance from shore. And if you were headed south like David, you would come to that outermost buoy, then you would make a hard turn to starboard, a hard right turn, and then you're in a line up to go all the way down the fairway with those navigation buoys on each side. What may have happened in this case, because as I was talking to David a bit more, telling me that the waves were really rough out further into the ocean, so he and his wife were kind of hugging the shore. And I think people sometimes have a tendency to head straight towards the jetty as their angle rather than the navigation buoy. And if you get too close to the shore, obviously the waves are going to be pushing onto the shore, and sometimes you even have the breakers, and it could push your boat, and if there's heavy winds, pushing your boat right onto the shore. And that sounds like what could have happened in David's case. Obviously I wasn't there, and it's easy for me to speculate, but it sounds like it was really a horrible combination of wind and waves, and then potential this angle of navigation that was contributing to this. But nonetheless, just thankful that David and his wife are okay. So thank you all for watching this week. Be sure to comment below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know what you thought of this format, kind of an interview style, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.